All right. I am going to go ahead and call the meeting to order. Good morning, everyone. I will acknowledge all board members are present with the exceptions of Larry Williams and, well, there's Pat Bodie right on time. So good morning, Pat. And we will excuse Larry for the moment, and we'll see if he joins us here momentarily. We will start, as we always do, with the acceptance of minutes. The minutes are from the October 29th, 2020 meeting. We're provided with the board materials. I'll entertain a motion to accept the minutes.
So moved.
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. All right, next up, Joe Barry with a report from our secretary. Morning, Joe.
Yes, good morning. I have two items this morning. The first is our 2021 board meeting schedule, which I provided with the materials. It's consistent with our past practice to meet either on the third or fourth Wednesday of the month, which works out well with making the contractor payments. If there's a consensus, I'll go ahead and issue it as the final. If board members need more time to check it out, we could wait to next meeting.
Any concerns about the schedule? Anyone?
No.
If it ain't broke, don't fix it. Looks like we're good to go, Joe.
Thank you. The second item, which will be coming up for also for resolution, is our annual directors and officers liability insurance. The insurance market is a little unsettled this year, as you would probably imagine from COVID. The good news is, though, by increasing our deductible from 25 to 50,000, we were able to get essentially the same premium as we have in previous years. And I think that risk is relatively low because with our past 14-year history, we've never had a claim with this insurance. So I would recommend going forward with this option.
Joe, do we need a motion for that?
It's coming up as a resolution, but I wanted to mention it as part of my
Great.
report. And
Got it.
that completes my report.
Hey, Joe, this is Chuck. Do we only ever do this on a year-to-year basis? There's no multi-year, knowing that we have projects that will extend multiple years?
Historically, we've only done it on an annual basis. I don't know if it's available on a multi-year basis. I can inquire with our insurance agent.
I just didn't know if, if we had done multi-year in the past, we wouldn't be subject to the same volatility.
I think one of the issues could be that we pay for it out of the city and school district's annual budget. It's not eligible as a payment out of bond proceeds. So there'd be some question about how we would pay a multi-year premium that we'd have to look into.
Okay, that helps. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Great. Thanks, Joe. You should be seeing on your screen now our program update summary and monthly report. And with that, I'll turn it over to Chris Gray to go over it with us. Morning, Chris.
Good morning. How's everyone?
Doing all right.
Okay, we'll start upper left-hand corner under the procurement section, just to kind of give you an update on where we are. The Fowler interior package, I know we reported last time that we received bids on that. We did have a request for withdrawal, and I think that is something that is still in its process here with Division of Purchase. So we don't have any new to report on that one. I think the piece there that's important is we have a path forward with the second place bidder. Need to make some alternate selections to be able to work within the budget. I think the one piece here that's worth mentioning is that we took bids on the 20th, so we've lost about a month in terms of on that procurement side of the house. So we'll have to focus on that when we do get to go forward on that one. The concession storage building, we took bids, as we said, on the 10th. We've had meetings with the low bidders. We're developing recommendation letters for that to move into an award phase, and then we anticipate we're going to start construction on that in the spring. To try and start that at this time of year is probably in the interest of everyone to get that going again once the weather breaks. So that's the plan on that one. Under corporate site package, we anticipate, we've been talking about that for the first quarter, so our anticipation is that we would do an advertisement in January, get that bid and awarded, lined up for the work to begin in the spring and complete by the end of the summer of 2021. Under Nottingham and the additional work packages, we have the scope has been developed. It's been submitted to SED as an addendum because much of the work that was on there was already had been identified as part of the original design submission. We've added a little bit of work to it. Spoke with the state and asked that we submit it to them as an addendum to the project just so they could put eyes on it and give us their approval. So we anticipate that back relatively shortly, given that it is just an addendum to the original project. I think the couple pieces of action that will be required here, I think, and this kind of runs into my item below underneath project budget and approvals. We are in the process right now with all the T1 buildings of reconciling budgets, getting contracts closed out for T1. And we anticipate that we'll be coming to both the school board and to JSCB in January for an alignment on T2 and T1, which will involve changing some of the building budgets to realize and capture some of the savings from T1 and apply that towards performing the additional work, some additional work over at Nottingham. So that is into the state. We will need that the budget increase. Any questions on that? I just in terms of the general sense of what we're doing here, we want to make sure. Obviously, the premise of the whole project has been that we continue to maximize our budgets and utilize the funds as we go forward and kind of progressively. So that's part of that. At Henniger,
Chris, can I ask a question? And
sure.
This is when you talked about the bids and the RFPs and maximizing the budget and utilizing the funds. Do we utilize our workforce as well? How do we utilize our workforce when it comes to JSCB?
Can you say a little more on that, Helen, for me to help me understand the question?
Okay, because I get a lot of calls, okay? And when you talk about the bids and the RFP and the low bidders, these folks are calling me, telling me that they've bid on these projects. They were the low bidder and somehow it was like swooped away from them. So maybe at some point we could sit down and talk offline because I really want to understand this process.
Sure, it would help. That would help me as well because I need to kind of understand the individuals that are raising that question, because if they're a subcontractor and they're putting numbers to a general contractor, because all of these contracts are prime contracts, which means we have a contract with one entity. And if they're a subcontractor and they're not getting feedback, they're not getting discussion from the general contractor in terms of what happened, how did it end, is a little bit different answer than if it's someone bidding as a prime contractor. Does that make sense?
It does, but I want to take a deeper dive into this. Sure. Because we need to really look at how we're actually putting out these contracts and these bids and these RFPs if we're going to do what we're talking about as a city, and that's being inclusive to everybody. So I really want to talk about that. I want to talk about some of the pay structure as well. So, okay, we can have
be happy to have that conversation with you, because I think the entities that are speaking to you, the folks that are talking to, I need to understand who they are, what they do, and how that fits in. Because underneath our current platform, it's a single prime is our format. So we ultimately take numbers from a single prime, and then there's multiple subcontractors that are bidding to them. So.
Okay, so yeah, because I'm hearing that it's kind of like clustered to certain single primes. So we need to have a conversation.
Sure, be happy to.
Great. And I just asked that, based on that conversation, if you feel like it's worth expanding it to the rest of the board in a future meeting, just let us know. Thanks, Helen.
Mayor, I think it would be, because I would echo Helen's comments. Certainly this is something I think we should have a discussion possibly at our next meeting. And Helen could get you some particulars, and I certainly could as well.
Good. All right. Well, let's plan on it then.
I would say that we should probably include Landon and Ryan in the discussion, because that's the entity that we have in place that does that auditing component of saying, did you reach out? Who have you spoken to? Did you, in terms of achieving the diversification plan goals, that's the entity that's doing that audit, that's challenging that component of it. So it'd be good.
They should be included, because there's some things I want to talk about as far as Landon and Ryan as well. So yeah, let's have a conversation.
Okay, that'd be great. And then the Henniger kitchen equipment bid. This is a bid that'll be put out. This is a direct purchase that the school district is facilitating this, and it's to purchase the kitchen equipment. So we're anticipating that would be out in January as well, and that'll be a competitive bid that will be procured. All right, under budget, project budget and approvals, we're ongoing with our final cost reports, and as we dial down the T1 schools, we're kind of looking at the first quarter of 2021 as starting to get some of the final cost reports issued to the state in concert with closing out those T1 jobs. And then I had spoke to this a little bit before, but I'll just touch on it again. So what we'd anticipate is that in January we would be seeking formal action from both the school board, Syracuse City School Board, and from JSCB to modify some of the building budgets in both tranche 1 and tranche 2 to if there's funds remaining, that we can then reallocate those appropriately and to be able to perform additional work as we move down the line. So any questions on that? Again, I'm not seeking any action this month or next month, but just want a heads up to coming in January.
Just wanted to share. I shared this with Mary. Just share it with you and the board. I had had a conversation with a contractor who was expressing some frustrations around the timing associated with change orders. So I just wanted to flag that for everybody. I know there's a number of moving parts there, but just encourage everyone to make sure that that process is going as efficiently as possible.
Yeah, I've heard the concern as well. I've had some discussions to the individual, to the entity that you're speaking of. So we've had some dialogue there, and that is something I've identified. It's been there for a couple months in the center box there under constraints and critical issues is change management. We have a process. The process does, as any process would, in terms of approving additional costs, have approvals from several entities. There's a multi-step there, and yes, we are actively trying to make that process a bit more efficient. But what I would tell you is, it is multiple entities, and there are improvements or efficiencies to be gained on multiple fronts. It's not one single entity that's causing that problem. So it's a collective effort, and it's also collectively become lengthy. So, okay. But yes, work in progress, and we've had several meetings actually even this week.
Great, thanks.
So just any other questions about that alignment that we're going to be doing in January? Just if there's anything else on that, I'd just like to have folks prepared for that. Okay. Under project design, I think we mentioned that that Henniger addendum is in that the approval for the additional work at Nottingham is into SED. Beyond that, in terms of project design status, under Henniger would be a place that eventually that's our school that goes out the furthest in terms of schedule. And so if additional funds were to be, additional budget was to reveal itself and be available, Henniger would be one that we've kind of identified some additional work scopes there if budget permits, and that would probably not be realized until we probably did that in the first quarter of 2022 to line us up for summer of 2022. So that's where we're going. At Corcoran, we've identified some additional work that we would do over there or like to do at Corcoran, but we would anticipate that that would probably be accomplished within the existing project, meaning we wouldn't be seeking additional approvals from SED. It's just there's some additional work over there, so we've got a prioritized list for there as well. Under construction budget updates, under I would say Blodgett, Grant, and Huntington are all pretty much at the same status that we've chipped away at that. Punch list is down to some minor items for that for the most part, and then working through some issues that there may be some items that we're going to seek credit on because of the completeness or lack thereof of a certain item. So we want to reconcile that and make sure that we get an equitable settlement on where we are with getting those closed out. So working through all of those, and as I said, our hope is that by first quarter of 2021 that we're assembling final cost reports for those. Ed Smith and Bellevue will be closed after this month. We were able to get everything completed over there. And Ed Smith, I anticipate the same thing, that will be first quarter for final payment there. In terms of the high schools at Corcoran, we're moving forward to continuing to work with the B building classroom renovations, phased construction over there. Trying by the end of December, we've got some turnovers that we anticipate there at Corcoran. Henniger, the addition is going well. The picture here, you can see I've been trying to get you the same kind of perspective every month from a drone shot there, so you can kind of get a feel for how that's coming alive. The floor slabs are poured. Next step will be to start to get the exterior wall up and get that building enclosed before the weather gets how it usually gets in January and February. So that's our plan there. In Nottingham, again, progressing over there. Things are coming along well. Focused on the library and getting that to a point that it can get turned over. Clary and Danforth, I think are kind of in the same boat with respect to we're kind of through the abatement and the tear it out phase and starting to move back to the put it back together phase in terms of both of those buildings. Any questions on any of that? Calvin, did I see your hand up? Oh, okay. You were saying hi? Okay. All right. Very good. And then constraints and critical issues, the only one that I wanted to touch on, which we already did, was the team component. So that concludes my report.
Great. Thanks, Chris. Lots going on. It looks like it's all moving, so that's good.
Moving along. Thank you.
Good to hear. All right, thanks. Okay. Let me pull up our agenda here. Looks like next up we have our friends at the Bonadillo Group. Is that Keely? Are you gonna get us started here?
Good morning, Mayor. How are you?
Good morning. Good.
Okay, if I can direct you to the full financial statement, we'll go through that first.
Okay. And Keely, you're a little hard to hear, so just if you can speak up, that would be great.
Okay.
Just sounds like you're a little far away.
All right, so if I can direct you to page 1 and 2, which is our auditor's report. Is that fine?
I'm going to try to share it here. Bear with me. Yeah, I think I have it pulled up here. This the one?
That's the one.
Great. And what page are we starting
on? Page 1. Number page 1.
Oh. Right here?
Yep.
Great.
So this is our auditor, or our independent auditor's report. We just completed our audit for JSCB year ended June 30, 2020. And the bottom paragraph on page 1 right here is our opinion. And in our opinion, We believe that the financial statements are fairly presented in all material respects. And that is the opinion that you're looking for. That's the highest level of assurance that we can provide. And we received that unmodified opinion on both the governmental activities as well as your major governmental funds. Page 3 through 9 is your management's discussion and analysis. So that is what the folks at the school district assemble. It is unaudited, however, it is required to be included with the audited financial statements in order for those to be fairly presented in accordance with JSCB. Essentially, it's a regurgitation of the information in the financial statements, and you can take a closer look at that on your own. Mayor, if you could scroll to page 10, please. This is your statement of net position. So for anyone that is not familiar, your financial statements contain two sets of financial statements, what we call your government-wide as well as your fund financial statement. So this statement of net position is part of what makes up your government-wide financial statement. It'll include all of JSCB's assets and liabilities, which include long-term assets and long-term liabilities. So as you can see, capital assets, net of accumulated depreciation of $301 million, which is the second number. And then you'll see a whole host of long-term liabilities of $360 million below the liability. The key takeaway here is your total net position, which is that number all the way at the bottom of $69 million, means that your total assets are in excess of your total liability by $69 million. Scrolling to page 11, this is the total revenues and total expenses for the governmental activities. And this shows last year your total net position was about $59.5 million, and that increased about $9.6 million to that $69 million. So your total revenues of $23.5 million exceeded your expenditures of just under $14 million. So your total net position continues to grow. Scrolling to page 12. This is your governmental balance sheet. So this is on what we call the modified accrual basis. So as you can see, the major difference between this balance sheet and that statement of that position is that you will not see capital assets or long-term liability. And that is because this is on that modified accrual basis for only current transactions and current assets and current liabilities that are reflected here. This is a nice way to take a look at your entity on a budgetary basis. And if you scroll to page 13, that'll actually walk you through a reconciliation between page 12 and page 10. So it'll show you what the total fund balance of the governmental fund is, that $127 million. And then it'll show you the effect bullet by bullet for those long-term assets and long-term liabilities, and how you ultimately arrive at that total net position of $69 million. Scrolling to page 14, this is your statement of revenues, expenditures, and change in fund balance. Again, because of the modified accrual basis and the fact that there are no long-term assets and no long-term liabilities, what you will see here is the effect of those long-term assets and long-term liabilities flow through the JSCB governmental fund through revenues and expenditures. So what I mean by that is, if you look about halfway down the page, the capital outlay number is $80.5 million. So that means that there was an addition of capital assets of that $80.5 million, and that gets reported as an expenditure in our modified accrual financial statement, versus when it comes over to that government-wide, it gets reported as a long-term asset. Under other financing sources and uses, you will see the effect of any debt-related transactions. For instance, your proceeds from issuing of a serial bond of about $8.5 million is recorded ultimately as a revenue because it is an inflow of cash, and that is the impact on a budgetary basis on the June 30, 2020 page 15, similar to page 13, will provide you a reconciliation, but versus the balance sheet side versus the assets and liabilities. This will provide you a walkthrough of how to arrive from those revenues and expenditures in the financial statement to the revenue and expenditures in the statement of activities, which is in our revenue slide. Page 16 is the start of the financial statement footnotes. And Mayor, if you could scroll to page 21. Here's your capital asset footnote. So this is a nice snapshot of where you landed with your capital assets at the end of June 30, 2019. So you had capital assets with a net book value of $223 million, and then ended the year June 30, 2020 with $301 million. And that was the result of those increases in construction in progress for all of the projects that we were working on this year that are not yet complete, net effect with current year depreciation of just over $4 million. And then in that transfer column for the $6.7 million, that essentially represents items coming out of CIP and going into buildings and improvements. So what that means is that upon completion, that moves to the buildings and improvements line so that it can begin to be depreciated. Depreciation does not kick in until completion. So that $82 million in construction in progress addition did not have any depreciation yet until completion. And that $301 million of net capital assets will agree back to your statement of net position as on page 22 is your debt footnote. So you will see your bonds payable. You, at the end of last year, had serial bonds due of $247.8 million, and $80.5 million was issued in serial bonds during 2020. So that's in that addition column. And then the $11.9 million of reduction represents principal payments that were made during 2020. And your ending balance in bonds payable is $316 million. You have premiums associated with those bonds, of which the addition is linked to the $80 million that was issued this year, with the reduction being an annual amortization on premiums from previous issuances. So your total long-term liability is $360 million, again, which will tie back to that statement of net position on page 10. The bottom schedule is a nice snapshot and amortization schedule of the total bonds that have been issued and in what years. So again, you can see that $8.5 million that was issued in 2020. And if you scroll to page 23, this schedule will provide the total amount due at June 30, 2020, which is that $316 million, and will provide you with the principal and the interest due in each of the following 5 years, as well as groups of 5 years beginning in 2026 through 2037, which is your latest principal due on your outstanding bonds payable. This year, you did not issue any bond anticipation notes. However, last year at June 30, 2019, there was $23 million in bonds outstanding. So those were paid off with bond proceeds. So you'll see that reduction of the $23 million with a zero ending balance. On page 25, The subsequent event footnote looks a little different this year compared to previous years, as does essentially every GAAP financial statement being issued these days. But there is a paragraph on financing there. I think if you scroll up to page 25. Yep. That first paragraph is on financing and explains that there is a 30 million 2020 series bonds that had been approved. And then we go on to speak to the pandemic. Essentially, this outlines what we have known and what has occurred since June 30, 2020. But again, the ultimate long-lasting effects of the pandemic at this point are unknown, but this will outline any of the known effects to date as of today, which will be the date of it. Page 26 and 27 is other information. This is a combining statement of that position and a combining balance sheet. This basically takes those two documents on page 10 and page 12 and breaks them up into buckets for capital assets and debt service. Those totals will nicely tie back to page 10 and page 12. On page 28 and 29 is our report on our audit results in accordance with government auditing standards. This is where we define significant deficiencies and material weaknesses. We are required to provide this language in this document to you, but I'm happy to report that simply it really does just outline the definition, and we did not have any findings to report to you. Any questions on the financial statement before I move on to our required communication? Okay, great.
Nope. Which document are we going to next, Keely?
This will be called the required communication, or it may say task 114.
Great. All right, hang on one second. That's not what. Sharing here.
Mayor, it may have been the first 3 pages in the financial statement document from Keely.
There it is.
There you go.
Okay, perfect.
Thanks.
So this document is our required communication as part of performing our audit. The standards dictate that we touch on these elements with those folks as we wrap up the audit. Basically, at the bottom of page 1, we mentioned that we've had no significant difficulties in dealing with management and their performance audit. Everything ran smooth. All information that was requested was prepared and presented to us timely and complete. So we appreciate that. With regards to corrected misstatements, we did not have any what we call material audit adjustments. However, we have an unadjusted difference, which I will touch on as we work through our document here. If we can scroll to the next page. We did not have any disagreements with management. We are not aware of management trying to obtain any sort of second opinion. We communicate regularly with management during the audit, as well as sometimes in the off season throughout the year. And all of these conversations are in the normal course of business and are not contingent upon our retention as the independent auditors. So those are important matters for you to know. If you scroll to the third page, this is a summary of unadjusted differences. So what this means is that this is a difference that we identified, and it is not material to the financial statement, and this entry is not reflected in the financial statement, but it's significant enough that we just want you folks to be aware of that. So if you recall, when we took a look at the financial statements, we have two sets of financial statements. We have that governmental fund, which is your JSCB on the modified accrual basis. So this entry has to do with only the government-wide, the governmental activities where full accrual, long-term assets and long-term liabilities are reported. This entry, if made, would be an increase to expense and a reduction to your long-term capital assets. And the reason for that is currently in your capital assets, the debt issuance costs have been capitalized rather than expensed. When it came over from your fund's financial statement, it was included in your capital assets. The GASB says really that amount should be expensed. It's an expense that was incurred in the period in which you issued the debt, and therefore should not be included in the capital assets, subsequently amortized and expensed through depreciation expense over the next however many years. So this entry, if the correction was made, would increase your expense in your governmental activities and reduce your capital assets. Again, although this may look like a very large number, it is actually immaterial and really only about 0.5% of the total assets that JSCB has in that position. So therefore, it's a big number. We like you to be aware of it, but it does not modify your opinion, and it does not mean that the financial statements are materially misstated. With that being said, we've already had discussions with management, and going forward, those issuance costs will be expensed in the government side and will no longer be picked up in capital assets. So this will be something that will be corrected going forward. Are there any questions on that?
Questions? Doesn't look like it.
Okay, great. That concludes everything for me. Thank you again. We appreciate everybody's flexibility. Obviously, doing audits right now during COVID is certainly a unique situation, but the folks at both the city and the school district were phenomenal working with us to get us the information we needed safely, timely, and could not have asked for it to go better.
Great. Thanks, Keely. Great job to you and your team, and great job to the finance teams at the city and the school district. Job well done by all. All right. Thanks. Let's see. Next up, we will go over our financial statements, which I will bring up momentarily here. Donna? See. All right, those should be up. See, Donna is on with us on mute.
Can you hear me?
We can hear you now, yeah.
Okay, good. Okay, I'm going to start down on page 5 as I normally would on the financial report. I'm going to start with the statement of net position. So at the end of September, the JSCB fund had a total of $124.8 million of both phase 1 and phase 2 cash. So compared to the August statement, cash did decrease by $8.8 million, and that was due to vendor payments of $8.5 million, and we had a $3,000 increase in investment income. So included in assets is the total capital assets of $301 million, and that represents all project activity up to 6/30/20. So our total assets is $426 million. The total liabilities at the close of September was $364.3 million, and that includes the bonds and premium payable for both phase 1 and phase 2 debt. So at the end of September, the unaudited total net position is $61.8 million. And I'm going to go on to the next page, which is page 6. And this is our statement of sources and expenditures. No activity for phase 1, as you can see. We're only into the 3rd month of this fiscal year. And for phase 2, we had earnings on investments of a total of $10,669, and that's as of from July 1 to 9/30. The total expenditures through September totals $20,063,116 in vendor payments. So that gives us an excess at the end of September of a negative $20 million. Now we're going to go on to the next page, which is page 7. And this is our cash flow report. And this report does represent the sources and disbursements on a cash basis that flow through all the accounts for JSCB. The actual figures are provided for July through September, and October through June of 2021 are projected. You'll notice here for September, it just reflects everything that I just told you. The interest income is $3,693, and the total capital expenditures was $8.8 million. So we're looking at a projected for the end of June 2021 of $61.5 million left in the accounts. And then we're looking at the next page, the final page, and this would be our inception to date report. And there is no change in activity for phase 1 projects. Phase 2, we have a total of $292 million in sources, and our total expenditures for inception to date is $173.7 million. And that concludes my report. Does anybody have questions? No? Okay. Thank you very much.
Mayor, I don't have any questions for Donna as it relates to the report. I just do have an overall question for Chris and just the budget team for the city as well as the school district. And this can wait until next month's meeting. For Chris, I'd be curious as to, with COVID, has the impact been favorable for overall the contractors or not favorable? And if it's been favorable, do we anticipate a slowdown of work in 2021 because there's more opportunities? And obviously, if it's unfavorable, you know, what the concerns would be in terms of cash flow. So, Chris, don't need to answer today, but would like to, you know, curious how COVID has affected this particular industry, because some industries have benefited favorably and some haven't. The second thing would be, you know, for Susan and again, Mayor, your team, with the state facing, you know, billions in deficit, is this going to impact us with our project? So Donna just gave the cash flow statement. Do we need to look at altering that for 2021? Just what the greater impact would be with some of these budget projections that we've been looking at for months. I cannot believe they're going to be the same. That cash is going to be delayed would be my guess. But how is that going to impact us and what we're going to do, how we're going to be able to move further? It goes, a portion of it goes to Helen's initial question, because now if cash flow is going to be tighter on us and our accounts receivable, we're going to hold cash longer, and the contractors are going to, the primes are going to hold it longer for the subs. So, you know, it's a big question. I apologize, but I do think it's something we should address and get in front of.
So Kelvin, if you'd like, I could answer that this morning and then follow up again next month if necessary. And it's a great question. So the state has come forward and said that state aid in all various buckets and forms of state aid could be reduced by 20% this current year. If that happens to building aid, it would impact the school district, but not this particular set of JSCB financial statements, because the JSCB debt is secured by a state aid intercept. So every dollar of state aid that the school district receives goes first to the trustee, who intercepts the money needed to pay our JSCB debt, and gives the residual amount back to us. So this will, regardless of the timing of state aid and regardless of the reduction of state aid, the JSCB debt payments funding will come through timely. So the impact would really be only on the school district in terms of cash flow.
So Suzanne, that's great. And what you just said, one word you just used, which is important, you said timely. So you said that the money, basically my words, is guaranteed. There's no concern. But again, that word timely, everyone's holding cash. You know, there's $5 trillion. There's $5 trillion across the United States that industry they're holding cash, and we see it from the banking perspective. So if you're saying that the money's guaranteed, we're gonna get it, and they're not going to hold it to affect, to favorably affect their cash flow, their cash position, that's great. Is that correct? That's what I heard. They cannot hold it based on the legislation.
So the state can hold it back from the school district and adjust the timing, but the intercept is set up so that between the period of December of 2020 and March of 2021, all of the debt payment funding will be intercepted from the state aid payments we receive in that 4-month window. And regardless of what happens with state aid, those 4 months are our highest paid months for aid. So the intercept will happen. Those funds will be set aside in JSCB at the trustee, and then will not delay any payments for JSCB.
So Suzanne, I would just offer this final comment then. And again, the word you use is intercept. If it isn't intercepted, I would suggest we get Trill Williams from Syracuse University to go and intercept that money for us, or Hall of Famer Deion Sanders, to make sure we get it here in a timely fashion.
Yes, sir.
Really good questions, Calvin. Thank you. And thank you, Suzanne. You did remind me, Calvin, of one other item that I wanted to touch on with you, Chris, related to the pandemic and the work being done. I am hearing reports that we're continuing to have challenges with compliance with some of our contractors, mask wearing, distancing, things like that. I want you to really stay on top of that one, and I want you to let us know. I want you to name names if and we're gonna get out there and we're gonna cite them.
Fair enough. It is a constant, we need to constantly be watching it and reminding, it's a challenge, no question. The people are fatigued. They know, you know what I mean?
I think some are fatigued and some are in denial, and we're beyond the point of education and informing now. The science is clear, and between SPD and the county, we're ready and willing to issue citations. So you just let us know.
Fair enough. Okay. Thank you.
Okay, good. It looks like we are at the point of resolution, so I'm going to turn it back over to Joe to walk us through them.
Yes, we have several resolutions this morning, starting with resolution number 70, which should authorize the board chair to sign the audit representation letter.
So moved.
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried.
Resolution number 71 would be our monthly payment resolution for the contractors on the project.
So moved.
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Carried.
Resolution number 72 would be the authorization to purchase the annual directors and officers liability insurance for 2021.
So moved.
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Carried.
And finally, resolution number 73 is to award a contract to the Nickerson Corporation to install a gym divider curtain motion detection safety system at the Ed Smith Elementary School.
So move.
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Anything else, Joe?
No, that completes our resolutions for today.
Okay. Anything else for the good of the order?
Happy Thanksgiving.
Happy Thanksgiving. Enjoy it with only those in your households. Thanks, everybody.
All right.
Oh, we need a
Take
motion
care.
to adjourn.
Oh, thank you, Joe. Motion to adjourn.
So move.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Meeting adjourned. Take care.